Actually, but for a time we're going to see a spell of rain crossing Northern Ireland, but it should peter out through the afternoon. Meanwhile, across Scotland, the rain will continue across western areas. The east may not see much of that rain until late on, but it is very blustery as well. Further south, the winds are light. That old weather front may be providing a bit of drizzle here and there, but generally dry, but fairly dull, but mild, with temperatures again climbing into the teens. Through this evening, we'll see a bit of that rain just trickling into northern England, maybe across parts of Wales before it fizzles out. Lots of showers then coming into Scotland, a few for Northern Ireland, staying blustery here as well, a bit of snow on the tops of the mountains across Scotland. But elsewhere, the skies tend to clear and it turns a bit chilly. Temperatures well down into single figures, but it does make for a brighter day tomorrow, certainly for most of England and Wales. A few showers, certainly early on over northwest England, and showers will keep going through the day across western Scotland. A few for Northern Ireland as well, but many areas here will be dry, and certainly across much of the southern half of the UK, it's a dry, fine day with decent spells of sunshine, a bit of a breeze and a slightly cooler feel, but still these temperatures are pretty close to average for the time of year. Through Wednesday evening, we'll start to see a bit more cloud spilling into Northern Ireland, turning a little bit damp and drizzly, and that rain will push into western Scotland, where it will linger through much of the rest of this week, through Thursday and Friday as well. But elsewhere, staying largely dry through the rest of this week. Lots of cloud around, and again, it's going to turn milder, but perhaps things turning colder through the weekend.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very good afternoon. It's just after 3 o'clock. A very warm welcome to the Briefing PM. I'm Darren McCaffrey. Coming up over the next hour, we'll be live in Westminster, where Keir Starmer is due to give a news conference on parliamentary standards. We'll be live in Liverpool with the latest on that terror attack. And we'll be discussing the migration crisis on the Belarusian border. What should we in the West do next? All that and much more in the next hour or so. But first, at 3 o'clock, here's the news with Simon.
Thank you, Darren. I'm Simon Pusey. This is your news at just after 3 o'clock. Former Yorkshire County cricketer Azeem Rafiq says racism in cricket is worse than in society. He has appeared before MPs to discuss allegations of institutional racism at the Yorkshire County Cricket Club. An investigation by Yorkshire concluded Mr Rafiq was a victim of racial harassment and bullying, but nobody was disciplined. Mr Rafiq told the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee that abuse in the club went unchecked.
Look, there's things that are not right and we can really all learn from it, and what's happened to me has happened. It'll never change. but my aim was to try and see if my experience can help others.
Nicola Sturgeon has announced that the current COVID restrictions in Scotland will remain in place. During an update to the Scottish Parliament, the First Minister said there had been no spike in COVID cases following COP26. She also praised participants for following safety measures, with just 4 in every 1,000 people testing positive for the disease. However, she did reveal that nationally there had been a gradual increase in positive cases from 2,000 a day to 3,000.
I can confirm that at our meeting earlier today, the Cabinet agreed to keep the current regulations in place with no immediate changes. There is no sign so far of any significant spike in COVID cases associated with COP26.
A Liverpool MP says Muslim people in her constituency are facing racial hatred after Sunday's terrorist attack. The 4 men arrested in relation to the taxi explosion have now all been released from police custody. The bombing suspect who died in the blast has been named as 32-year-old Ahmad al-Sway al-Min. The driver, David Perry, survived the incident and has since been discharged from hospital. The terrorism threat level in the UK has also been increased to severe, meaning an attack is highly likely. Minister for Security and Borders, Damien Hines, told GB News people should be as vigilant as possible.
If you see something that doesn't look right, something that makes you suspicious about something, just to go that extra mentally, go that extra distance to say, yeah, I should report that. And if it turns out to not be significant, then nothing's been lost.
French police are evicting migrants from a makeshift camp near Dunkirk, where hundreds of people have been living. At least 1,500 people have been based on the northern French coast for the past 6 months, many hoping to cross the Channel into Britain. The latest eviction comes as those living rough, including families with young children, face uncertain times as temperatures drop. The Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been charged with 2 additional counts of rape. The 27-year-old is now facing 6 counts and 1 of sexual assault, which relate to 4 people over the age of 16. He'll appear at Stockport Magistrates Court tomorrow. A debate and vote on MPs' conduct is on the Commons agenda at the moment. Last night, an attempt to scrap the controversial standards reforms that sparked Westminster's sleaze row was blocked by Conservative MP Christopher Chope. Former Labour MP Stephen Pound told GB News that sleaze is widespread.
And there are some people who are still trying to justify with this most sort of egregious nonsense, this risible theory that somehow, having being a spokesperson for a hedge fund actually adds lustre to the cluster, actually makes you somehow a better MP. Absolute nonsense.
NHS leaders are calling for cash bonuses for social care staff to stop them resigning this winter. They've suggested £500 incentives from the government to keep them from moving into hospitality, supermarkets or firms like Amazon over Christmas. This comes after the requirements of care home workers to be double vaccinated in a sector with over 100,000 vacancies. And for all you Star Wars fans out there, there's a chance to get your hands on an original poster being sold at auction in December. Fans will bid on the largest collection of alternative film posters to be sold in Europe, worth more than £250,000. More than 750 pieces of rare artwork will be up for grabs at the auction. The Empire Strikes Back poster is expected to make £8,000. And I'll have the latest headlines for you in around half an hour's time. And now it's back to The Briefing with Darren McCaffrey.
Yeah, hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, your afternoon fix of all the latest political news, debate and analysis here on GB News. Coming up over the next hour, we're going to be live in Westminster where Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, is going to hold a news conference on calling the government out for second jobs and also on parliamentary standards. We'll bring you that live at 1:30. Also, we'll be in Liverpool after a suspected suicide bomber was named as a failed asylum seeker. We'll be looking at the investigation there. And we'll speak to a member of the European Parliament about the situation on the Belarusian border, with Polish troops today firing water cannon at migrants. We'll be looking at what more the EU should be doing in its efforts to support Poland. And as always here on The Briefing, we want to hear what you've got to say. Get in touch. You can email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews. As always, very good afternoon and welcome to the programme. But first of all, we're going to start actually with another big political story today, and that is that an influential group of Northern Tory MPs and Northern newspapers have criticised reports backing down by the government over its much-hyped levelling up agenda. This all revolves around rail. MPs and the government said it was watering down plans to boost trains in the north, including downsizing plans for a second section of HS2 between Birmingham and Leeds and an east-west line between Manchester and Leeds. Well, as you can see, the papers have gone pretty hard on this. The Teesside Gazette, Manchester Evening News, the Huddersfield Examiner and Newcastle's Chronicle Live all running matching front pages this morning. The graphics there, as you can see, clearly a parody of the Trainspotting film, urging the government to keep its promises. Also, as you can see, the Northern Echo ran with a headline, deliver what you promised, over an image there of the Prime Minister. And you just caught it at the very end. The Yorkshire Post went with levelling up agenda is in doubt. They're not mincing the words, are they? Well, the Northern Research Group of MPs who represent many so-called Red Wall seats that Boris relies on for his majority have also voiced their concerns. The group, made up of Northern Tory MPs elected in 2019, is chaired by the former Northern Powerhouse Minister Jake Berry. In a statement, they said they would look for judgment, essentially, until the integrated rail plan is published. We think on Thursday this week, was reminding the government of repeated commitments that it's made, including the Prime Minister's own commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail. It is definitely one to watch, and we'll be bringing you full coverage of that announcement when it is due to come on Thursday. But if you live in that part of the world, maybe if you use train travel in the north of England, do get in touch with us. We want to get a sense of what you feel about the government, this levelling up agenda, their commitments. Boris Johnson made that speech a couple of years ago saying he was determined to succeed with this. Now seems to be backpedalling. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. We'll get some of those in before the end of the programme. But first, let's focus on what's been happening in Liverpool over the last couple of days, because the suspected suicide bomber who was killed in a blast outside Liverpool's Women's Hospital on Remembrance Day was a Syrian-Iraqi asylum seeker who had had his application rejected 7 years ago. That investigation is now continuing with anti-terror police involved. Of course, the terror level has been increased yesterday. Let's go over to our Home Affairs and Security Editor, Mark White, who is there for us. Good afternoon to you, Mark. Just bring us up to date with what the latest is this afternoon.
Well, we are starting to get a fuller picture of who this suicide bomber was who detonated that device in the back of the taxi on Sunday morning. Ahmed al-Sawalmim had come to the country several years ago and had applied for asylum. He'd come from the Middle East. That asylum application was actually rejected in 2014. He'd been appealing to be able to stay here. Now, a couple who had effectively adopted this young man, they said he was destitute. They'd taken him under the roof, and they have been telling the media actually that he converted to Christianity in 2017. Now, there has been some concern that a number of asylum seekers have adopted a tactic of converting to Christianity as a way of trying to enhance their bid to get that asylum application granted. However, the couple in this case say they are quite convinced that this young man was genuine in his conversion to Christianity and was not using it as some kind of tactic or ploy to remain in the country. It has raised, though, some concerns over asylum seekers and just the vetting process that is there. It is very difficult at times for authorities in this country to be able to check fully on the background of those who are coming here and entering into the asylum process, particularly those who come via irregular routes, such as the small boats across the English Channel, and many more of them are coming again today in a wave of small boats on the English Channel or in the back of lorries, because as part of the tactic that the people smugglers adopt, they tell those coming across by this irregular route that they should throw away their identity documents, that they should throw away their passports, bank cards, anything else that can fully identify an individual. That then makes it much more difficult for the authorities to return someone to their country of origin, especially if they're from a part of the world where you're dealing with fairly dysfunctional countries and governments. It can be very difficult, and that often results in people being granted leave to stay here in the UK. Well, authorities in this country have expressed some concern about their ability, because of the lack, Darren, of these identity documents, to properly delve into the background of asylum seekers who do this, because they want to be able to build as big a picture and as complete a picture as possible on whether they may well pose a threat to UK national security. And to tell you how pertinent that is, you only need look at the situation you alluded to at the start of the programme, the unfolding situation on the Poland-Belarus border and indeed on the Lithuania-Belarus border. The Lithuanian government have said that some 4,000 people have been pushed across their border by the Belarusian authorities in recent months. They've been able to do some checks on some of them that have come across, and more than 24 of those people seeking asylum in Lithuania had links with terrorist organisations in the Middle East, mainly out of Syria, groups like ISIS and other radical extremists that were involved in the fighting in Syria. So some real concern there being played out on the border between Belarus and Poland and Lithuania and Belarus, but also an issue that they're grappling with here, because you will remember the Parsons Green bombing in September of 2017. Well, that bombing carried out by Ahmed Hassan. He was also a failed asylum seeker, turned down in his asylum application, trying to fight that. And eventually, of course, we know, took a bomb similar in makeup to the bomb that was used here on Sunday. It didn't fully detonate, thankfully, in that tube carriage, but it still injured 30 people.
Meanwhile, Mark, the police investigation continues. We know the Security Minister, Damien Hinds, is in Liverpool this afternoon. I think 4 men who've been arrested have now been released, but police saying that that address in Sefton Park, Rutland Avenue, is becoming central to their investigation.
Yeah, and central to their investigation, Darren, because this was the bomb factory. It's where this device, we understand, was assembled, and where this young man got that taxi to the hospital on Sunday morning. The taxi picked him up from the address in Rutland Avenue. So it is a treasure trove of evidence, really, for the police as they examine the ingredients that were used in this device, how that device was constructed, as they try to determine whether any other people may have been involved in actually buying the ingredients or helping in the construction of the device, and of course, importantly, whether there may be any other devices similar to this still out there.
I'm Mark White there, who's covering all this for us up in Liverpool. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's talk now to Dr. Alan Mendoza. He is from the Henry Jackson Society and joins me down the line. Good afternoon to you, Alan. Just first of all, having listened into what Mark was talking about there, what's your sense of where we're at in terms of trying to understand to a degree the motivation that might have been behind this apparent attack?
Well, it remains very complicated, doesn't it? What remains unclear is why the attack essentially occurred. There's lots of speculation about the circumstances of the attacker's past, of course, what might have happened in terms of his so-called conversion, whether that was legitimate or not, whether it was a device for asylum seeking. I guess, the working theory is that this was an aggrieved individual who had tried to stay here. It didn't like it was working, and he took action. But of course, it remains unclear whether that's the actual motivation. I think we need to learn a little bit more from the police investigation. We've been told, of course, that developments have occurred. Well, let's hear about them. Let's see what they think actually occurred here.
And that's the really interesting thing, isn't it, Alan, to many regards, is, we do only have limited information, and it is difficult sometimes to speculate about these things. In fact, I'm sure the police would argue at times it's unnecessary and unhelpful. But in saying that, clearly this is now part of a wider picture that is fed into that increasing of the terror level for the entire country.
Yes, I mean, I think this is the key part here is that obviously having had 2 terrorist attacks now in 1 month, there has to be a reaction from the security services. What is clear from this one, of course, is that the attacker was relatively unknown to at least the security services, clearly to other agencies not. And so I think the key to this is members of the public being vigilant. And let's not forget the hero taxi driver. He was the vigilant one. He was the one who realised something was awry here. This was not a normal situation, a passenger going somewhere, and decided to take action that, put his life very much in the firing line, literally. So it is a message to the public to say, be alert. There's clearly something in the air. We've started seeing attacks re-emerging. You could help stop an attack like this if you see something and call it out.
What is also interesting, kind of on a much wider picture, is that, thankfully in this country it is quite difficult to get hold of explosives, even to make these improvised devices. Clearly getting hold of weapons, like guns, for example, is particularly difficult as well. And when you've got these kind of so-called kind of lone wolf attacks, there's kind of almost the fear around them in comparison to how much damage. We don't know how much damage this individual could have done or may have done. But to a large degree, actually, the security services and our infrastructure and our laws have been quite good at meaning that we've not really seen that many mass casualty events in the last 10 years or so.
We have
attempts at that. I mean, clearly Manchester was an exception to that.
The Westminster attacks, the London Bridge attacks. I mean, we have seen people dying, and not just 1 or 2 people, but quite a number. So I wouldn't quite say it's not the case. We've been lucky. I mean, there was a case just cited, of course, on Tube, which was a lucky case, of course. It didn't go off. That would have been mass atrocities. So we've had some luck, and that, of course, is useful, but it isn't, of course, a conclusion to where we as a country want to be. We don't want to be lucky. We want to be, kind of efficient and effective at stopping this sort of thing.
Yeah, what I was trying to say, though, it's not just luck. There are security services that are pretty good as well.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, I think, you see the number of terror plots year on year. We're told this number of terror plots were underway. This number was stopped at this stage. This number was stopped at that stage. Members of the public helped us in these instances. And by the way, that's another key thing linking to your earlier question, which is that members of the public tipping off the services for various people they feel are suspicious have been instrumental over time in terms of stopping terrorist attacks from taking place. So yes, the security services are good. The British public is good at stopping events happening. And sometimes, as in the Manchester case, we discovered, of course, that people did spot things going wrong on the day itself, and they weren't taken seriously. So, in a sense, the vigilance part of this is working. The security services part of this is often working, not always, because, of course, we've seen some suspects who slipped through the net. And, of course, the sad truth is, the bomber has to get it right just once, whereas we have to get it right every single time.
Indeed, very true, very true. Dr. Aaron Mendoza, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts this afternoon there from the Henry Jackson Society. OK, we're going to take a quick break on GB News. Up next, we'll be live in Westminster where Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, is due to hold a press conference. We'll have full coverage of that. And also debating what's happening on the Polish-Belarusian border. Some pretty shocking scenes there. We're debating what the EU should be doing next. All that and much more in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's get the weather on this Tuesday afternoon.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. After another fairly cloudy day for most of us today, tomorrow looks brighter, with many of us seeing some sunny spells. There will be some showers across the northwest and a slightly fresher feel, perhaps. That's because a cold front is slowly pushing across the country. It's bringing some wet conditions across parts of Scotland. It's cleared through from Northern Ireland. Also notice the isobars close together. It's a very windy day across the north of Scotland. Lots of showers coming in here as well. The band of rain trickles south across England and Wales, but kind of fizzles out as it does so. And it will eventually introduce clearer skies through the early hours, and that will allow it to turn a little chilly with temperatures down into single figures, but generally we're staying above freezing. On to Wednesday, and certainly across the south, a much brighter day compared to recent days. Sunny spells across the Midlands, southern England, South Wales, much of northeast England too. There will be a few showers over northwest England in the morning. They should fade away. We'll keep showers going across western Scotland throughout the day. Any showers, though, in Northern Ireland will fizzle out, but it will cloud over here come the afternoon. Temperatures not as high as recent days, but still around or a bit above average. And feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, but probably just a slightly fresher feel, as I said at the start. Now, there will be some thickening cloud, bringing patchy rain to Northern Ireland through the evening. That becomes more extensive across Scotland during Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. And we'll keep outbreaks of rain going across the far north and west of Scotland for much of Thursday. A bit of drizzly rain here and there over the hills and mountains of southern Scotland and northern England, but for many, Thursday is again a dry day, but we're back to the cloudier conditions. And again, especially across the northern half of the UK, it will at times be quite breezy, but it's turning mild again. Look at the temperatures by Thursday with a bit of brightness in northeast Scotland. We could be up to 15, maybe even 16 Celsius. Friday also looking fairly cloudy but breezy. Some patchy rain drifting south through this weekend and also slowly turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the programme on this Tuesday. The time coming up to 3:30 now. The situation on the Poland-Belarus border has escalated further today, with Polish security forces having used water cannons and tear gas to disperse migrants across the border in Belarus after they were pelted with stun grenades and stones. The big question is how much of this is part of a much wider geopolitical row between Russia and Ukraine. Those are the images there you can see of the Polish police using water cannon to essentially stop those migrants from pushing any further. How much is Vladimir Putin part of this? How much is this an attempt to undermine the European Union? Well, let's speak to Bernard Sunak, who is the MEP for AfD in Germany. Good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First question is, what do you feel when you see those images on your screen of, police in Poland using tear gas and water cannon to fight back refugees who, frankly, might not be there of their own accord, have been pushed there by the Belarusian authorities?
Well, first, frankly spoken, I'm happy that the Polish forces are doing the European job, because the EC, European Commission, failed. And when I see these kind of incidents, these pictures, indeed ugly and worrying one, it is not the first one, and will be not the last. I'm 100% sure. Remember the situation a year before on the Greek-Turkish border when migrants were pushed forward by Erdogan. So we have a similar pattern. Erdogan is the strong man in Turkey and is facing a weak European Commission. Now we have a strong man in Lukashenko in Belarus, and we have a weak European Union. That means Lukashenko used this, in my opinion, as a blueprint in Turkey. And he was very hopeful that he will succeed.
But Bernhard, have you not got sympathy? You're right in pointing out that there are two different players on this side, but have you not got sympathy for the migrants who are literally caught in the middle?
Well, frankly spoken, they are not invited. So if they are coming and are part of as an instrument, as a tool, well, it's the problem of Lukashenko. It is not our tool. It is not our responsibility, in my opinion. I know I am ugly man. This is against every standard of the human values, against the European values. But I'm also pragmatic. I'm an elected member of this parliament to defend our European nations. This is my job. I'm not here to rescue the world. And if somebody uses human beings or whatever to attack us, so I have to defend our population. What happens if we say, okay, let's open the border for these people, 3,000-4,000, as already mentioned? Did you hear about that? At least the double, the 3-4 times much are waiting in the back, let's say in the backyard. They're still coming. So if you once open it, give a signal, they will follow 100,000, whatever. So I think this must be very clear. We have to be a tough stance. It must be no doubt we defend our border, period.
But the bigger question here, actually, and these migrants are somewhat caught in the middle. It's difficult to work out how much they are there of their own volition, because it does seem that the Belarusian authorities have been pushing them forward. But ultimately, maybe Germany's not been strong enough on Vladimir Putin. One of the criticisms of Angela Merkel, and indeed a whole host of German politicians, is that they've been too close to Russia and actually not hard enough on Putin.
Well, it's a bigger picture, of course. But in this case, I don't think that anybody, even not Putin or whoever, he's not so a very big friend from Lukashenko, that he will now increase a crisis and maybe get it out of control. Nobody can be interested in. So this is the one thing. The only thing what I'm concerned about is when now not still Chancellor Merkel is acting in whatever. She's acting on their own behalf. She's not acting for Poland. She's not acting for the European Commission. She is acting as Merkel. And this makes me big headache, I tell you.
Just on a wider issue, aside from the politics of what's happening, do you not think migration is part of how Europe sustains itself in the future? Germany's got a falling, ageing population. In many ways, actually, Germany's economic success in the future can only be reliant upon migration, as much of Western and indeed Eastern Europe can be. I mean, the population in Poland is falling, or has been, the same in Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania. Frankly, Europe might need migration in the years to come.
Indeed, we need migration, but we need qualified migration, and we have to select the people as all civilized countries like Canada, United States, Australia, whoever is doing. We invite everybody. That means who is, let's say, sick, who is violent, who is stupid, whatever. There is no limit. And this is the problem we are criticizing. We are not criticizing migration itself. Whoever, even if you want to apply tomorrow, whatever, for job, you are cordially welcome. But we have to select according our standards. We need the people to fill up, let's say, the gap between the people we need and the people we are. So that's it. And for our future, I think they cannot contribute in this industrial world. Definitely not. I was living for 9 years in these countries.
OK, really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed. That's Bernard Suniak, who is an MEP for the AfD party in Germany, clearly opposed to migration on the whole, but that's his thoughts on what's happening on the Belarusian Polish border. Now, we said we're going to go live to Westminster. We're going to hear from Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, in a couple of minutes. But first, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader, is introducing him. They're talking, of course, about standards in parliamentary life and second jobs. Let's have a listen in to this press conference.
He has been investigated for breaking the rules in every role he has ever been elected to. He has already broken parliamentary rules twice over his own financial affairs, so he tried to change the rules. And while we wait for the outcome of the Electoral Commission's investigation into whether any laws were broken when the Prime Minister did some dodgy deals to get a Conservative donor to pay for his flat to be done up, he's trying to put Conservative ministers in charge of the Independent Electoral Commission. Now compare that to Keir's record. After the expenses scandal, Keir prosecuted MPs for breaking the rules and put them behind bars. Keir has dedicated his life to public service, prosecuting rapists, murderers and terrorists before becoming an MP and serving his community. The Prime Minister has shown that he will only ever act in his own self-interest and never in the public interest. So it will be a Labour government led by Keir as your Prime Minister and me as your Deputy Prime Minister that will stamp out Conservative corruption from our democracy and our public office. And now, I have the great pleasure, and I'm delighted, to be able to introduce Keir Starmer, our next Prime Minister, to set out how the next Labour government will restore the values of integrity, decency and honesty to our politics. Keir.
Thanks, Angela. Good afternoon, everybody. We're fortunate in this country. Voters may not always agree with politicians. They often don't. But they can trust that disagreements are sincere, that their representatives are acting in what they think is the public interest, and that we can resolve our sincere disagreements in debate and at the ballot box. The vast majority of MPs care about our democracy, and they honour that trust. They don't earn millions from foreign governments. They don't use the proxy vote rules to bunk off to the Caribbean, and they don't lobby government because they've been paid to do so. Instead, they just go about their job, trying to make sure that our laws are written in the best interests of their constituents and of the country. But those MPs have been let down. And more importantly, so have the British people. Because the corruption scandal that's engulfed the Tory party is corroding trust in our Parliament and in the belief that politics is a force for good. Everybody who cares about British democracy wants to call time
on the scandal that the Prime Minister has created and allowed to fester. Tomorrow, Labour will give MPs the chance to begin to repair the damage. It's time to ban MPs from being paid directors and commercial consultants. This shouldn't be a controversial statement. Labour has long called for this. The current Code of Conduct recognises that these roles are a potential conflict of interest, but it doesn't ban them. We voted to fix that in 2015, but we were blocked by the government. A change along these lines has been recommended by the Independent Committee for Standards in Public Life, but there hasn't been any action from the government. We also know that Randox have been awarded government contracts of almost £600 million without competition or tender. We know that the former member for North Shropshire lobbied for Randox. We know that he sat in on a call between Randox and the minister responsible for handling health contracts. Against this backdrop, there is obviously a concern that the use of taxpayers' money may have been influenced by paid advocacy from the former member from North Shropshire. So if the Prime Minister is interested in rooting out corruption, he needs to launch a full investigation. We need full transparency with all the relevant correspondence published. The Prime Minister's decisions led to this scandal. He's repeatedly failed to show leadership on the issue. And the Prime Minister now has a choice. Support Labour's plan to fix our politics, or whip his MPs to vote against a ban on MPs being paid directors and commercial consultants, and for a cover-up of the Owen Paterson scandal. Wednesday's vote is vital. But let's be honest, it's only the start of what we need to do. So these are the changes that Labour is calling for. First, ban all second jobs for MPs, with very limited exceptions, starting with a vote tomorrow on banning MPs from working as paid parliamentary strategists, advisers or consultants. Second, stop the revolving door between government and the companies that ministers are supposed to regulate, with a ban for 5 years after leaving office. Third, stop Tory plans for foreign money in British politics and create strict rules about donations from shell companies. Fourth, stop waste and corruption with taxpayers' money with a new office for value for money and reform of the public procurement system. And fifth, strengthen the government standard system with a new independent integrity and ethics commission to defend and extend standards in government. We have a strong system in the House of Commons with the Independent Commissioner on Standards and the Standards Committee. In addition to that, we need an overarching independent body across government with adequate powers to look at ministers' behaviour both in and out of office. Enough is enough. It's time to draw a line and wash away the Tory sleaze that's doing such damage to our politics. Now, I hope that the Prime Minister agrees and will take these measures forward. If not, the next Labour government will legislate to do so. There are plenty of MPs who've acted in accordance with the rules and done nothing wrong. But there are moments that cause us all to reflect. This current Tory sleaze row is one such moment. When faced with the scale of the Owen Paterson scandal, The Prime Minister's instinct was to rip up the rules and to protect his mates. My instinct is the complete opposite of the Prime Minister's. I believe profoundly in the values of public service. That's why I became the Director of Public Prosecutions and why I prosecuted MPs who broke the rules on expenses. That's why I feel so passionately we have to meet this pivotal moment. We have to make the change that is necessary. What the Prime Minister and the government have done in the last 2 weeks was corrupt and contemptible. It's not a one-off, it's a pattern of behaviour. We can tolerate this, we can turn a blind eye, shrug our shoulders, or we can decide that Britain deserves better. We need a government that governs in the public interest, where standards count for something, where truth means something, and where honesty is at the heart of everything that it does. The Prime Minister is not capable of such government. I know it, he knows it, increasingly the British people know it. This is a pivotal moment. It's time now to act. Thank you very much, and I think we'll now take questions.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take the questions, but apparently the Prime Minister's just written to the Speaker saying that MPs should be banned from acting as strategists, advisors or consultants as per with our motion. So you're already cleaning things up a little bit, but there's still way too much to do.
So we've won the vote tomorrow already?
Well, allegedly. So Chris Mason I've got first from the BBC. Chris, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Chris Mason from BBC News. So yeah, just picking up on that point, in the last few minutes whilst you were speaking, the Prime Minister writing to the Speaker saying the Code of Conduct will be or should be updated, saying that any outside activity undertaken by an MP, whether remunerated or unremunerated, should be within reasonable limits and should not prevent them from fully carrying out their range of duties, and also should not accept any paid work to provide services as a parliamentary strategist, advisor or consultant, and that this needs to be done on a cross-party basis. So I wonder on that basis whether you think tomorrow's debate is now necessary or those talks should happen in some other format. And on the question of second jobs, you say banning all second jobs for MPs with very limited exceptions. Would a very limited exception be, as you did, earning more than £100,000 after you became an MP for working as a lawyer before you became Labour leader? Thank you.
Firstly, on what the Prime Minister or his office have said, we'll obviously have to look carefully at what he has said. If he is accepting the motion in full, then that's a significant victory for us in our work to clean up politics. But obviously I need to look at exactly how he's put it and whether we need the vote tomorrow. But if the motion we've put down is now accepted across the House, that is a very significant step forward, not least because the motion is binding. And therefore this is a meaningful vote and a very important victory for the Labour Party. On second jobs, which is a wider question, obviously, what I'm suggesting is a change of position, that we need to move forward on this, and that the default should be a ban on all second jobs with limited exceptions. The exceptions that we have in mind going forward, and this shouldn't be retrospective for those that have acted in accordance with the rules, is where there's an element of public service or a requirement in some cases for political, for professional qualifications in terms of keeping qualifications going. Now, the examples I would give would be somebody working in A&E or perhaps a police or army reservist. But it's a change of position on second jobs going forward.
It would ban what you did do.
Yes, legal advice wouldn't be permitted under the new rules. The new rules would only have very, very limited exceptions. Now, I'll be clear, this is to change the rules going forward. It's a moment in time. And if we can get the Prime Minister to go beyond what he seems to have maybe moved to tomorrow, to also accept the ban on second jobs, then we're really making some progress.
Thank you, and I hope he takes into account the Randox situation and comes clean on some of those contracts as well, I'd say. We've got Shihab Khan from ITV.
to echo the point that Chris has just made, if the Prime Minister is now actively writing to the Speaker and saying that he wants to punish MPs who prioritise outside interests over their constituents, hoping that they are investigated and appropriately punished, and prevent MPs from taking paid political consultant jobs or lobbyists, does that not mean that you are essentially on the same page now and tomorrow it doesn't need to happen?
Well, firstly, it's always important with this Prime Minister to read what he's actually said or what his office has actually said, and therefore I don't want to commit until I've seen it. But if he is accepting the motion that we've put down for tomorrow, that is a very significant victory for the Labour Party and would not have happened if we hadn't forced that vote. The government have obviously been looking at whether the vote is binding all day, and so if they have accepted it, it's a significant step in the right direction. As you will have heard from what I just said, we've got a 5-part plan for cleaning up politics that goes beyond the question of consultancies, etc., which is the subject of tomorrow, into changing the rules on second jobs, and then to the other 4 issues that I covered in the address I made. And so there's a long way to go yet, but if we have already achieved victory tomorrow, then that is an important first step. We need to go further.
And we've got Sam Coates from Sky. There you are. Didn't recognise your mask on.
Thank you. Sir Keir, will your ban on second jobs apply to every member of your shadow cabinet, including peers? For there are peers in your shadow cabinet who take considerable outside income. And secondly, Caroline Noakes has told Sky News that Stanley Johnson smacked her on the backside about as hard as he could and said, "Oh, Romsey, you've got a lovely backside." What should happen now? What should the process be? And if found guilty, what sanction might he face?
Well, taking both those issues, Sam, in relation to the rules I'm proposing, what I would hope is that we can go forward on a cross-party basis. That may already have been achieved in relation to parts of it tomorrow. I'd like to advance all of them on a cross-party basis because in the end, it's going to be the House that has to enforce whatever the change rules are. And as I said in my address, if and when we come into government, we will legislate in relation to those. So far as the shadow cabinet is concerned, I'm just going to come to that bit. Don't worry. In relation to the House of Lords, there is a different position in the House of Lords because obviously MPs are paid a salary to be an MP. In the House of Lords, there's an allowance on a daily basis, but many members of the House of Lords have a job. I would not tolerate anyone in the House of Lords that had any job that involved lobbying in the shadow cabinet. I'll be very clear, I wouldn't do it now, and we certainly wouldn't do it in cabinet in government. But the position in the House of Lords is different to the position in the House of Commons.
OK, thanks.
Yeah. I will get there. It takes great bravery to make the sort of allegations that have been made, and it's very important that we make that clear from the start. The allegations are serious and they need to be fully investigated. I don't think at this stage it's for me to say what should happen as a result, but it takes guts and bravery to come forward to make allegations like this. They now need to be fully investigated either by the Conservative Party or by the criminal authorities. But those allegations having been made, there now needs to be an investigation into them. As to the outcome, that obviously depends on the investigation.
OK, thanks. We've got Jane Merrick from iNews.
Thank you. You described this as a pivotal moment this week, and you're hoping that lots of voters will look at you as the man to clean up politics. But can you tell me, Labour are slightly ahead in the polls at the moment. Is that because the government is doing badly or because you're doing well? Well, look,
the polls change on a regular basis. I think that, contrary to, I think, what the government hoped in the first place, this scandal of corruption and contempt has gone much deeper than they anticipated. They thought, and this is where what the Prime Minister did was not just corrupt, it was contemptible. They thought that they could rip up the rules in relation to standards and get away with it. And if it hadn't been for the reaction of the public, they would have no doubt gone and continued down that road. You know, they went out and briefed against the independent commissioner the next morning. That wasn't an accident. That was a direction from the top. It's only because of the public reaction that the government has had to back down on this. The Prime Minister still hasn't shown leadership by coming forward and actually apologising for what he's done. And that's why he was so roundly criticised last week for not turning up to the debate last Monday, by us and by his own side.
I think, and this is why me and Keir are here today, is it's not just good enough for the Conservatives to do badly. We're showing the contrast, actually, and the difference, and that's what the point I was making, in the difference between Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who always puts the public interest first, who has got a track record of doing that, and a Prime Minister at the moment who has proven himself to put his own interests and the interests of his ministers first. And, you know, part of that programme is about the fully independent Integrity and Ethics Committee that we want to set up, because it's quite clear at the moment there's a revolving door that's happening between whether it's the former Prime Minister being WhatsApping, getting involved, or whether it's the stuff that we've seen through the leaked WhatsApps and the leaked reports today on other ministers. So there's a real problem here that needs to be fixed, and I think it's not only important to criticise and show where the government have got wrong, but show that actually we would be a very different government under Keir Starmer's leadership. I think the next one is Kate. I've not called Kate, have I yet? Kate Ferguson from The Sun.
Ferguson, yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
There we go. That was Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, and Keir Starmer, of course, Labour's leader, holding that press conference in Westminster, focusing clearly on second jobs and the whole allegations around sleaze. Interestingly, of course, Keir Starmer calling there for all second jobs held by MPs to be banned, apart from in very limited circumstances. And saying that he wants the Prime Minister to roll behind on that. Really interesting, though, he stood up at 3:30. 2 minutes later, the Prime Minister, which Keir Starmer, of course, was asked about, tweeted out a letter in which he says he wants to see the rules changed. The MPs who prioritise outside interests over their constituents must be investigated and appropriately punished. Seems like a pretty big go at Geoffrey Cox, of course, the former Attorney General, who's been working and earning an awful lot of money as an attorney for the British Virgin Isles, but also saying that MPs should be banned from acting as paid political consultants and lobbyists. So not quite going as far as what Keir Starmer wanted to see, but it's still a big political move by the Prime Minister in the wake of what happened with the Owen Paterson affair a couple of weeks ago. He's trying to change the rules to protect Owen Paterson. Now he's saying that MPs should be banned from acting as political consultants or lobbyists when they're paid in that regards. It's going to cause an awful lot of a political stink that will affect an awful lot of Conservative MPs. Of course, we've got PMQs tomorrow and the Prime Minister up in front of the liaison committee. There'll be lots of talk about this politically over the afternoon. We'll have full coverage on GB News throughout the day. So stay tuned for that. But that's it from the briefing for today. I'm back again tomorrow at 3. Won't miss that. Alex is up next with the afternoon agenda. Before we do all of that, though, let's get the weather this Tuesday afternoon. See you tomorrow.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. After another fairly cloudy day for most of us today, tomorrow looks brighter, with many of us seeing some sunny spells. There will be some showers across the northwest and a slightly fresher feel, perhaps. That's because a cold front is slowly pushing across the country. It's bringing some wet conditions across parts of Scotland. It's cleared through from Northern Ireland. Also notice the isobars close together. It's a very windy day across the north for Scotland. Lots of showers coming in here as well. The band of rain trickles south across England and Wales, but kind of fizzles out as it does so, and it will eventually introduce clearer skies through the early hours, and that will allow it to turn a little chilly with temperatures down into single figures, but generally we're staying above freezing. On to Wednesday, and certainly across the south, a much brighter day compared to recent days. Sunny spells across the Midlands, southern England, South Wales, much of northeast England too. There will be a few showers over northwest England in the morning. They should fade away. We'll keep showers going across western Scotland throughout the day. Any showers, though, in Northern Ireland will fizzle out, but it will cloud over here come the afternoon. Temperatures not as high as recent days, but still around or a bit above average and feeling pleasant enough in the sunshine, but probably just a slightly fresher feel, as I said at the start. Now, there will be some thickening cloud, bringing patchy rain to Northern Ireland through the evening. That becomes more extensive across Scotland during Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. And we'll keep outbreaks of rain going across the far north and west of Scotland for much of Thursday. A bit of drizzly rain here and there over the hills and mountains of southern Scotland and northern England, but for many, Thursday is again a dry day, but we're back to the cloudier conditions. And again, especially across the northern half of the UK, it will at times be quite breezy, but it's turning mild again. Look at the temperatures by Thursday with a bit of brightness in northeast Scotland. We could be up to 15, maybe even 16 Celsius. Friday also looking fairly cloudy but breezy. Some patchy rain drifting south through this weekend and also slowly turning colder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars